Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guest careers to invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today I'm speaking with Georgia Athanasiou, founder of Bay Area CFO Consultants and powerhouse in strategic finance. With over 20 years of hands-on experience, Georgia has guided private companies through intense growth, economic downturns, and product failures, always with a steady focus on cash flow and sustainable profitability. Before founding her firm, she served as head of finance and administration at Sensor Networks, a smart cities technology company that achieved 3,000% revenue growth under her leadership. The company ranked in Inc. 500 and Deloitte 500, eventually being acquired by Swedish public firm. Georgia combines deep accounting expertise with strategic insights and calm in the storm presence that's made her a trusted advisor for companies navigating both opportunities and adversities. And what her resume doesn't tell you is that she's one of the nicest people around. We'll always find time for a good chat. Her smile brings a lot of sunshine to her room, and I always appreciate my time with Georgia, and it's wonderful to see you today.
Thanks, Zane. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
You make it easy. You've always been a great person to be around. I always enjoy our chats when we bump into each other, and on top of that, your LinkedIn content is very, very insightful and adds a lot of value to the community.
Well, thanks, and yours as well. I mean, I always look at your posts and, look forward to them. You post a lot more than I do, so you're probably getting a lot more content out there than I am.
We sort of focus in on slightly different areas, right? You're focusing on a lot of the strategic stuff, where I'm focusing more on the basics, because the space that I operate in, we run into a lot of business leaders that don't have basic accounting knowledge, can't even read a set of financials. So trying to think strategically about their numbers is very, very tough. And I love seeing your content because you are looking at it from the higher end, the cash flow side of it, the strategic effect on the business. That adds a lot of value for people looking at your content. And obviously, you come with a great reputation, a great resume, and I know you do a lot of great work for your clients.
Oh, thank you. So I should bring you along to my biz dev meetings.
Yeah, we'll clip this piece and you can just put it up on your website.
Exactly. It's like, just listen to Zane. He just tells the whole story.
Yeah, that's great. We've known each other for a few years now through a meeting at Provisors, and it's always interesting to bump into you. But, I didn't quite realize how in-depth your resume is and what a great experience you have. And I was pretty excited to take some time to talk about it today and sort of learn about where you came from, starting off in public accounting, moving into the tech space, and now being a consultant for a really long time. You're doing that fractional CFO work before it was cool to do fractional CFO work. So I think this could be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Fractional CFO work actually started in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as well accepted as it is today. And today it's very, it's a great solution and people are aware of it. And with, social media and technology, it's become pretty widespread. And it really is, it's a great way to service smaller businesses that don't necessarily have the resources to, work with a full-time CFO or don't need one, but yet they need help. And people are pretty smart business owners and people who've started their businesses, but they're not finance experts. So I think it helps to have someone like me and my peers come in and just do reality checks and, and ask the right questions and be able to ferret out issues. And if there's issues that, entrepreneurs are having, we can usually talk it through.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of business owners are trying to sort of gut feel their way through life. And, they're successful because their gut feelings are generally correct.
Yeah.
But their chances of being correct more often is done a lot more justice if they have somebody that can come in with a strategic mind, pull the numbers up, and either validate, their gut feeling or tell them, I think you got it wrong this time.
Right. I mean, I have a client who she's a do-good person, and she wanted to go down this one path with her business, but, it wasn't very profitable. And so, it took a while, but I finally got her to see where the business where she actually needed to be focusing her resources and her time. And she did finally. And, they're doing so much better now. So sometimes it just takes someone to look at the numbers and say, what you're trying to do, you're spending a lot of money, you're not making a lot of money, but this other niche is where your bread and butter is. And this is where you should be focusing because you guys have already established a presence in this particular niche, and your revenue can grow, by leaps and bounds if you just stick to your knitting and to where the money is.
Yeah, it is interesting because sometimes, people will chase the revenue number but not really understand the profitability around it or the cash flow around it. And that line of business might make 10 times the revenue, but it's at a 1% margin, where, this other side, it's less revenue, but you're making a 60 or 70% margin. And if you just focused in on that side of it, your bottom line would be better, your cash in your pocket would be better, and, less stressful, much more sustainable business.
And it comes down to unit economics. So I think one of the things I talk about in some of my posts is gross margin, and just for businesses to go through and run the exercise of, am I profitable on a gross margin basis? Because if I'm not, then I'm losing the battle before I even start. And so it's really important for them to really take a look and see how those numbers pan out. And then the operating expenses, I think you might have a little more leeway with. And so you can cut back or you can defer or you can do other things. But if that gross margin number's not there, then, you may as well just close the door and go home.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, in the wine industry, we run into that all the time where people think, oh, this is our best selling, SKU. And then we do the costing for the very first time that they've ever had the business and realize they're making pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And it's actually not worth their time once you take into account the cost of the salesperson, distribution, all that comes with it. But people don't understand margins. They don't really understand costing, and they get themselves into a little bit of trouble. And then it's clear there's a costing issue or a lack of knowledge of their gross margin, where they're showing lots of revenue, but the cash flow just is never there.
Yeah. And so profitability and gross margin are one thing, but cash flow is, it's different. It's more about collections and, matching your ins and outs so that you're not paying your bills too quickly and that you're collecting on a timely basis. And so, but you still have to know, as far as margins go, you still have to know if you're profitable from a unit economic standpoint. And so, again, if they're not, and all the cash flow things have to be in place too, but you're just not going to last long.
Great. Well, this is a good start, but I would like to hear a little bit about your career. So, assuming your LinkedIn resume is correct, you started out in public accounting back in Deloitte and KPMG.
Yep.
What was the thought? You left college and you decided this is the route I wanted to go. How did you decide to get into accounting? How did the career for Georgia start?
Well, I actually started taking accounting classes in my freshman year, and I really liked it. I thought it really clicked. And so I stuck with it. And, at that time, which was in the early 80s, the CPA route was really the way to go. There's more routes now with technology and all kinds of different options and things. But back then it really, the CPA was really the way to go if you really wanted to move up the food chain pretty quickly. And so I took the route to try and get into the big 8 at the time and did. And I stayed there for 4 years. And then I specialized in banking and savings and loans initially. I don't even know if there's any savings and loans left in the world today, but, it was just a form of real estate banking.
Yep.
And so I spent about 10 years in the banking industry and found the regulations and things really difficult to work with. And I really wanted to be in a higher growth environment. So I moved over to high tech and started working as a consulting controller and a CFO, and then went to full-time. I had a few full-time jobs in between there, and eventually went full-time with a client, and they were in the Census Networks, which was in the sensor networking space and smart cities and Internet of Things and stuff like that, and stayed there for a while. maybe 7, 8 years. And I specialized, in the manufacturing. I had a good background in that, and the sensor networking became second nature. So, and then at a point I decided it was time to really decide what I want to do. And I realized that the fractional CFO route was really the way I wanted to go. I was at a point in my career where it was, had some time left to make some changes. And, so I just decided to go ahead and leave that position. And I did stay on as a consultant for a few years and until they sold the business. And then once they sold the business, then they didn't need my help anymore. But I started working with startups, long time, like in the 90s when the first internet company first started, and then did that for a long time. And then about 5 years ago, I moved out of the startup world and just work exclusively with private businesses that are either bootstrapped or, family businesses or businesses like that aren't so much in the high tech space as much as, although they could be, it just depends. But they're not as much in the high tech space as I used to do.
Yeah, so less focus on high tech, more focus on small privately owned businesses. And if they happen to be high tech, then sure, no problem.
Yeah, and we're in a place where there's going to be a lot of wealth transfer and succession planning and exits and stuff like that. So it's probably a good place to be in terms of, the wealth transfer and stuff like that, and helping businesses make that as smooth as possible.
So you get involved in a lot of transactions, or mostly internal transfer of duties and responsibilities?
Both, actually. I helped a client a couple of years ago. I helped a client sell their business, and that went really smooth. We did it in a record time, and it was a good timing on their part. And then I also work with a company who's moving shares to family members for the next generation, and working with their attorneys to make that transition as tax deferred as possible.
Okay. Interesting. So just sort of like working through that timeline, you actually got almost 25 years of this fractional work, which is pretty incredible. 2 rounds at it, one in the 90s into the 2000s, and then your current role that you've been doing for the last 10 years, which is really great. And I do want to ask you some more questions of that. But before we get there, I would like to learn a little bit more about your time at Census Networks, because when you look at the resume, that's quite a glamorous role with a lot happening, and the revenue growth in that was incredible, and not a lot of people get to experience that world. So I think it would be quite interesting for people to hear just sort of what that experience was like. Rapid growth, lots happening, international ties, sold off to a big listed foreign company. Like, just give us some insight into what that experience was like.
So I had worked with the founders of Census in a previous business. And so I had done additional work. So whenever one of them would start a new company, they would call and say, hey, we need your help. And so I would go and help them. And so with Census, I was doing consulting work there for 4 years before I became a full-time employee. And so I ran finance on a part-time basis. They, again, like the fractional CFO, they didn't need a full-time person. But then once the company started growing, they did need full-time. So the CEO reached out and said, listen, we want to bring you on full-time. Are you interested? So we worked it out. And so the company did really, really well for a long time. And then, we raised 5 or 6 rounds, and they were, on the Inc. list and on the Deloitte list and all that. And it was very exciting. And things are really great when it's all positive, right? Mm-hmm. And it would have been wonderful to be able to say, oh yeah, we made this, huge exit and this and that. But then they encountered some manufacturing issues, and their product was a battery-based product. There's lots of issues with that, especially in the heat and stuff like that. And then they had some manufacturing problems and some other things. So I got to see both sides of the business, the ups and the downs. And I think you learn more. It's different. The ups are exciting and fun and adrenaline and all that. The downside's scary, and you just really need to be careful, and you need to know what you're doing. But it was the downside was quite the learning experience.
Yeah.
So, it was, I had for a time, my full-time job was cash flow management. I managed the cash every day. We were, working with the bankers, and trying to make things, keep the boat afloat and stuff like that. And it got kind of hairy for a while. But, on the other side, the growth was really fun. You're raising money, your investors love you, and board meetings are very, are more smooth. On the downside, they could be very contentious, and you got a lot of to answer to, and what are you doing to make this situation better and fix it? And, that kind of stuff. So it was pretty challenging in the last few years there.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up cash flow because it's sort of where I wanted to go to the next one. And, in both those scenarios, there are a lot of lessons to be learned. So on the upside, there's a lot of excess cash. People want to end up spending money that they probably wouldn't spend if the, cash flow is a little bit tighter and you got to, rein people in. And then on the downside, obviously, it's like, let's make sure we have enough cash to make payroll next week types of. So what sort of lessons did you learn in that environment in terms of managing cash flow that you think has helped you to be able to help your current clients?
Well, you learn, when cash is tight, you really learn how to be scrappy, and you work with, and you help your clients just do a better job of bringing the cash in faster and maybe holding off some of the payments that don't need to be paid, or working out if cash is tight. Sometimes you work out payment plans with clients. You have to work with your bank really carefully if they're reporting. They probably want more reporting if you're in cash flow constraint period. So I think it's probably, you get a lot smarter about managing it, and you're thinking about this is on the downside, and you're getting better at how can I make this last longer? What can I do to extend my runway? And so you come up with there's lots of tools out there that people can use to manage their cash flow better. Some of it is really expensive. Some, but others isn't, or you could come up with a less expensive way of maybe offering discounts to customers to pay you sooner instead of doing trade finance. I mean, there's different avenues you can take. And then on the upside, when things are going well, I mean, you still have to be really careful because it's like an accordion. I mean, you're switching, you're expanding out, you've raised around, the board wants you to spend it. They want you to get out there and grow and stuff like that. But you still have to be careful because you don't want to have to be going out there to raise money every 18 months. You can make it last, a couple of years or more. And it depends on the business and stuff. I'd still be careful. Sometimes there's situations where companies just raise too much money. And it sounds like it just sounds like an oxymoron, right? How can you raise too much money? But then I think they're not as careful with it, and they're not as scrappy, and they're not I think maybe that's one of the reasons I like working with the bootstrapped companies now, because they are more careful and they are more conscious, and they're, it's a whole different way of running the business as opposed to a startup.
I think when there's a lot of cash around, one, if a lot of cash came in, people are looking for a return, right? So you're having to make decisions to try increase that return. And then the other side of it is you don't quite look at contracts or push for discounts or better pricing as much because you're like, well, I can afford it. The cash is there available, which, if you didn't have that money available to you, you'd probably be nickel and diming your way from it, looking for discounts, looking for whatever you can get. And, I'm sure you had that situation where you're talking to vendors in two different scenarios. One's like, cool, thanks for the pricing. The next one's like, no, we need a cut. We need this. We need, you're trying to negotiate, and it's still the same business. You're still trying to achieve the same goal. The difference is the amount of cash you have on hand.
Yeah. And, there were situations where, in cash, in the startup world, cash flows up and down a lot. And so one of the things, one day you'd be like, how can I spend all this money? And, 2 months later, now I have to do all these layoffs because I overhired.
Yeah.
I hired too heavy, or I, did, spend some money in places that it's not as.
I had for 10 contracts, we only got 8 contracts. Now we're sitting with a bunch of extra people.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think, and I think it's hard. I think the CEO and the CFO have to be really careful, even if you do have a lot of money in the bank, just to make sure you have enough runway to kind of get you through the downside, even though things look, great and juicy. And, cash flow, there are cash flow constraints when you're growing too, because you don't know when your customers are going to be paying you. Sometimes large companies tend to pay really slow, 90 days or so, pay when pay, so you still have to be, ahead of the curve, even if you're plush in the pocketbook, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess with the big up and a struggling company as well, there's a lot of reforecasting that happens on a regular basis. I'm sure you learned a lot about forecasting and budgeting in those scenarios.
Oh yeah, and you're always updating your budget or your forecast. You set the budget and you do your best, but if you're seeing changes or if the market's changing, like now we're dealing with tariffs. 4 years ago we were dealing with COVID. I mean, we're just in a period of high uncertainty. At least over the last 5-6 years, we've been in that boat, and so you still want to be careful, with your cash, and you still want to remodel and forecast and do some stress testing and some different scenarios, and make good use of your time. Like if business is slow, maybe it's a time to be going out there and putting in better systems or, rethinking your strategy or, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the days of, set it and forget it budgets is way out the window. I don't think anybody can operate a business successfully that way.
Yeah, look at the volatility in the market just since the tariffs have been announced, and then there's some backpedaling, and then there's, again, we're pushing forward, and now we're going to pull back. So, it's just, you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the tariffs is just a small part of it. We're, also dealing with banks that have become a lot more conservative after the bank collapses a couple of years ago. So, you add that, and interest rates are up, it's expensive, things are getting more expensive, can't really afford the debt. People have to constantly rethink and probably pivot on strategies a lot of the time as well, because you can't just run forward with one idea because there's hurdles in your way, and you got to figure out, are you going to up, over, or around that hurdle?
Exactly. And so you're not going to, with the tariffs, you're not going to move manufacturing to the United States in 5 minutes. It's going to take time, and factories have to be built, or they're built and then they have to be refired up. And so it takes, but you want to model that stuff out or whatever, I guess, businesses just have to do the best they can in this environment. Our administration's not giving us a whole lot of information. I think they're still trying to figure it out themselves and just see, throw spaghetti and see where it lands and what sticks.
There's a lot of factors in these models that we can't even think of because nobody knows what's going to happen to the inflation price. Nobody's going to know what's going to affect the cost of labor. If you're going to also bring factories back to the US, that land prices are going to increase, those rents are going to increase because there's more demand for the same space. So there's so many factors to think into it. And like I said, all you can do is put some scenarios in there, stress test it the best you can, and hope for the best.
Exactly. And sometimes things work out, and other times, maybe you went in the wrong direction, but hopefully you can pivot fast enough and you're running enough scenarios to help kind of see some different options.
Yeah. So Georgia, you've had 2 consulting firms, one the first time, then you went to work for this big company, and then back to your own consulting. What keeps drawing you back to being a consultant? What happened? Like, why do you want to be a fractional CFO? What's the thought behind it? What's the motivating factor?
Well, for me right now, I'm at a career point where I want more control over my time, and I want to, I enjoy small businesses. So let's just start with that. That's the work I enjoy doing. And when I left my last full-time job, the goal was that this is it. I would just do this business and, whatever from there. And I just really like working with the number of different companies. I like meeting different people. I really like the smaller businesses. I think they're a lot of fun. The entrepreneurs I meet are super smart people, and they're usually a pleasure to work with.
Okay. And this time you sort of, from your feedback on what you're saying about the before, like, it seemed like the first consulting firm was more controller level work, where this one seems a lot more higher level CFO strategic. Is that just where you are in your career, or did you see a change in the market for services required?
No, I think it's just where I am, and it's with the type of businesses I'm working with. And I think I can fit the CFO role for the smaller privately held business pretty well. I mean, there's definitely CFO roles I won't take. Like, I got a call for an $800 million company. Somebody needed a CFO. Go, okay, that's not me, not even close. Yeah. And so, I like the niche I've selected. And so it's nice to be clear about the business, kind of what your niche is and how you want to run your business, because then that makes it easy to decide if someone's a good client or not. gee, I don't do that type of work, but let me refer you to this other person who does. They'll do a much better job for you.
That's a great lesson for anybody out there, is really understanding what you want to do. I know at times, sometimes, especially when you first start out your firm, you sort of take on what you can because you need to pay the bills. But when you get to a point where you understand what you like to do, what you're really good at, and then only accept clients in that space, you will be more successful because you'll be happier and you'll be able to give the best to those clients. And good service leads to good referrals, which leads to more good work.
Right. And then clients, and since my clients are in a niche, I can have experience in that niche. And so if somebody calls and says, oh, gee, I need this or that or the other. And I'm like, yeah, I've done that before and this is how we handled it. Or, I can usually help them right away. Even if they don't become a client, I can at least give them some tips that, maybe help them do a better job at whatever they're trying to accomplish. So and it's like you're the person to call, like the wine industry. Who am I going to call? Well, I'm going to call Zane Stevens because I know that's what he does. I know that's his expertise. And sure enough, all the regulatory and all the bookkeeping and accounting issues that come up and, and all that kind of thing. So if I hear of a winery that needs help, it's like, yeah, he's my go-to person.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And, that is a great way to handle it. And I guess one of the things that I think people struggle with is how do you maintain that discipline? How do you sort of keep yourself on track and make sure you stick to your niche? And I guess my question for you is, what advice would you give people out there to sort of be a bit more disciplined around their client selection?
Well, I think you have to figure out first what you like to do and what makes you happy. Like if you're a financial person, let's assume you like finance, but do you like finance? Do you want to be like an investment banker? Do you want to be a FP&A person? Do you want to be a small company CFO? So you have to figure out what you like doing. And then once you figure out what you like doing, then the business sort of comes to you, because I think you're open, and you're sending out maybe invisible signals, I don't know, but you're sending out, you're open to business. Yeah. So I'm open for business. This is the type of client I want. And then you'll start seeing those types of clients once you sort of decide and you niche and you focus on what it is you want. And, they just start showing up. It's not magic, but it's just attraction. You just you'll see it now. It's like, oh yeah, this business is great for me. It's the one, I think they'll be a great client. Or, yeah, that's not my thing. I don't do startups. So let me call this other CFO who does.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. And it is a little bit like magic. It does sometimes feel like they just appear. You'll be talking to people like, oh, I know somebody and they'll help. And like, well, yeah, we've spoken 100 times and we've never brought it up before. But this just sort of happens right now. And I think it's just, if you repeat your message, you stay true to who you are, you keep doing it, you will eventually find those people. And I think one of the points that you made in there as well that's important is, figure out who the other people around you are. I think sometimes we all get so stuck, like, I don't want any competition. But really, it's all about collaboration. I try to find people in my industry, other accountants like me that focus on the wine industry. I want to know who they all are so I can give their names as necessary. I want to know as many different accountants as possible. I love giving referrals out to other accountants. I want people I trust to come to me and be able to put them in front of people. So the more you build your network of other accountants, the more things just sort of fall in place. Because like, I'll sometimes get a referral and they're like, oh, I got it from this person. I go, look, I'm like, oh, they're an accountant. I wonder how they heard about me. And maybe we're in a networking group at some point and mentioned that I did wine and the name, So the more you're surrounded with people that do similar work to you, the more likely these clients will find you.
Oh yeah, and somebody's going to call and say, your power partners or whoever are going to call and say, well, that winery called and they asked who they want. We need a CFO. And I'm like, well, I'm not really your person for that, but I do know someone who is. And, and I think you ended up working with them.
It's possible.
Yeah. I don't even, they did the liqueur.
Hmm?
They did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They came on board.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah. And it can happen. And like, it could come from you, but it could also be us talking about it in a space and some random person is talking with us. And I've got referrals for work from the most random of places, people that I would think, there is no ways in the world they'll ever introduce me to somebody, and then they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I got your name from this," and I have to like rack through my notes, go to different versions. Who is this person's name? And then I quickly, oh, gosh, they're improvised. I guess we're in a meeting together at some point, and they heard they talk about wine. Like, it is crazy. The more you talk about it, the more you're very clear with your message and your marketing and your talking to other people. You get these people sometimes like, "Oh yeah, we do accounting for wineries," and then when they talk to people in the public, they're like, "Oh yeah, we do this and this and this and this." But that's a mixed message. Nobody really knows who to send it to. But if your message is the same place all over the time, then work finds you because people start remembering Jose and the wine guy, Jose and the wine guy, Jose and the wine guy, and that becomes a lot easier.
Exactly. And again, you can't serve everybody. It's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with startups, it's hard, especially when they're raising these huge rounds. I know they want their back office covered by one firm. So there's lots of those firms out there that kind of do the,
everything.
Yeah, they kind of do everything, the CFO and the bookkeeping and the HR and whatever else, they may need. And then some small businesses just need occasional help. So they'll bring someone like me on board. So, or they just want to work with someone, gee, we know Georgia, we know she does a good job, we'd like her. And so I want to work with her. And so, so it just, everybody's got their own reasons for hiring you. Maybe it's because they like you, or it's because, you've worked with them before, you've worked with someone they know.
Yeah, really interesting. Where do you think you make the most impact with your clients? Sort of, I had to tell people like, "Hey, you need to work with Georgia because this is the place where she really makes a difference." What would that be?
Well, I'd say probably, advice. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I know entrepreneurs try and they do it what they can on their own. But I think really just bringing the strong financial background and letting my clients see the numbers really helps. It's just showing them the numbers and saying, this is where you're at. And this is, the direction I think you should go. And, just being able to give them something concrete, so to speak.
Right. That's good. I mean, bringing knowledge and expertise and experience is really helpful, because a lot of people do come into business and it's the first time they're running a business and, they don't have a lot. And I've been trying to push the message lately a lot about, finding your team. There's a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I'm a solopreneur, I do it all by myself." And it's like, that's probably not true. Like, everybody needs a team around them. And it could be as simple as a spouse that is, they're giving them advice, having conversations. But generally speaking, it is finding those professionals that can help you, and having an accounting team in place, having a tax professional, an attorney. Those are all important team members to help you be successful. And if you can find people that have expertise and experience, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it helps a lot. And, there's lots of different ways I help clients. They need referrals, they need a wine accountant. So they're Zane, and they need an attorney. And, we've all got our provisors groups that we know, like, trust, and refer. And that's really, that network's been super helpful because, yeah, I do know this type of attorney or that kind of attorney or accountant. And it just really, it's just easy to go there because the person. I know so-and-so, I've been working with them before. They've referred me stuff. I've referred them stuff. Everybody's really happy. So let me, give their name to a potential client, like an intro or however.
Yeah, peer networks make a big difference. Having a group of peers that you can go to, bounce ideas off, and reach out. There's obviously a lot of professionals I know from the Provisor Network that I'd be happy to refer a lot of the time. But I think the biggest power for me is when something does come up that I can reach out to, some of the really good referring people in the group and go, "I really need this person that knows this industry and is done with this case." And 99% of the time, they'll come back with a name or another introduction to somebody in the similar space that will help me find the right person. And it just happens so quickly as well. Like, the speed that you get the feedback makes a big difference.
Well, I think that's just being part of the group. I mean, there's sort of a little bit of peer pressure in terms of, this is a provisor's lead. I better, it's one of these things you really do need to follow up on a timely basis. You can't let them sit.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've made introductions and it's taken the person longer than 24 hours to respond. And I've basically gone to my list and, put a little line through it, right? Like, I expect them, if I'm putting myself out there to give you a name and as a referral, just a response. Even if hey, I'm really busy at the moment, I'll get back to you in a couple of days, whatever it is. I think that is important because it's my reputation on the line, not just their reputation on the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it does reflect on you. It's kind of like, well, gee, Zane, you said you would get back to me and you haven't, and, what's up, and are you alive, and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that obviously is a great reason to have a peer group, but also the ability of sharing knowledge, getting some advice. I mean, the number of times I've just said, hey, do you mind if I can just, ask you something for 5 minutes? And people are always willing to give up their time. And that's not going to happen with a normal professional, right? That's sort of the power of a peer group, be it provisors, be it, I'm in some other accounting groups as well where I can do the same. I'm on a random WhatsApp group with a bunch of accountants all over the country, and I can drop them.
Oh, wow.
And I drop a message. I'm looking for an accountant who has this expertise, and within minutes, I'll get somebody. They'll, DM me. Like I had one. We're looking for a large payroll, account. We didn't want to just take on payroll, put it out there. I had 3 introductions within an hour.
Great.
So these networks, they all make a difference. Sometimes I know it can feel like a bit of a burden to be a part of them, but they really do amplify our ability to provide great service and add value.
Yeah.
Having the extra cards in your pocket is always helpful.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of you have your own group, and so there's definitely people in your group that you'd say. But then if there's a specialty or someone who's really well known for doing certain type of work, then you reach out to those people as well. So there's lots of opportunities. You just have to be visible, I think.
Yep, visibility. It's all about how much you put in is how much you'll get out. Unfortunately, everything in life requires a little bit of hard work.
Lately, everything just seems so laborious. I think there's just a lot going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's April 22nd as we're recording this, and I can still remember celebrating Christmas just like last week. So who knows where the time goes these days.
I know, it's incredible. Yeah, a lot has happened, and it happened so fast.
Georgia, can you give me a breakdown of what your standard day looks like as a consulting CFO?
Oh, sure. So I usually wake up at 4:15, which is like really early, but I think you're an early bird too.
4:40.
4:40. Okay, so we're like 15 minutes difference. Yeah. 25 minutes.
I've been trying to get a little bit extra sleep. It was 4:15 before, but I pushed my schedule a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard to get up that early, but I have a dog walker that shows up at 4:45, so I need to be awake and send the dog off with him. So I do, I get up early, I journal, I make my coffee, I eat my breakfast, I go through my feeds and just see what has come in, through the evening from the night before. And I look at potential content for LinkedIn, and just kind of catch up on the news and things like that. And then I, shower, take one, I have 2 dogs. I take the older dog out. And then, I usually start working by about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And then I try and focus on client work in the morning just because I'm more fresh. Mm-hmm. And, trying and I set a list, I have my daily planner and my weekly planner and my long-term goals and all that kind of stuff. But I go through my daily planner and just say, okay, what are my intentions today? What do I really want to get done? What are the big frogs? What do I have to eat this morning to feel like I'm, being productive or meeting my intentions of the day? And then, I go till about 3 or 4 and, do my workout and hang out with the dogs, take them for a walk and, dinner and just a regular relax.
Wind down at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't go, it's hard when you get up that early because you start strong and then you kind of peter out by about 4.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I never thought of myself as a morning person, but since I've adjusted the schedule, probably don't get enough sleep and don't go to bed early enough. But I do like the schedule. I do like that quiet time in the morning to get some work done, jump on calls with my team in South Africa. It's a pretty productive time between 4:30 and 6:30 type sort of range. I get a lot done.
Yeah, and I think when I get up that early, I don't feel rushed. I feel like I've got time to do some of these things. And it is, and I can look at some of the emails that came in or somebody's responded, and I can respond during a time when it's quiet. I'm not feeling that there's, phone's ringing off the hook, or there's, emails coming in, or, I have a deadline that I have to meet. So usually that morning time is when I can actually do most of my, my business in my business, work on my business.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's a great routine that you've got there. It can feel like I like routine, and my days look very similar, and it sort of feels the same way to you. And I'm not the most structured person. I'm a little bit, if you looked at my desk right now, you'd see that I'm not the most organized, but I do like the structure of my day, and I do like blocking time out for certain work. I love the advice of doing, thinking work in the morning. I see a lot of people leaving like the hardest work till the afternoon. I'm like, oh, your brain's already fried by that point in time.
Yeah, by about 3:00, I'm sort of done for. And so I'm okay to, I can do meetings and I can do things, but, if you're going to have to do some heavy lifting or some real thinking about your business or, client issues, it's probably the morning's probably the best time for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, for most people, that's probably the truth. And, personally for me, like after 3:00, my kids are home from school, and then it's very hard to get anything really productive done because there will be interruptions of some sort. And that's why we have these jobs that are flexible, and flexibility means a lot to me. And I love that they interrupt me while I'm, reading something. Great, I'll just read it again. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, or you can take time off at 3:00 and hang out with your kids, and then if you need to catch up in the evening, maybe that's an alternative. Or if you get up early in the morning, okay, I'll just take care of it first thing, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Georgia, what are some of the short-term goals that you have for your business?
So right now I'm trying to balance it. I'm trying to balance my short-term goal is to balance my business and my personal life. And so I'm at a point where I'm traveling quite a bit. And so just making it all work really can be very challenging.
Yep.
And so, it takes a lot of planning and communication, but so far it seems to be working pretty well. I mean, just between keeping clients happy and making sure I'm caught up on all their, and giving them the service they need, and still being able to take off and go, on a couple-week vacation somewhere.
Yeah. Are you still taking your computer with on those trips, or how are you managing it? Not at all. Not crazy like me that takes my laptop everywhere I go.
I do, I have, and if I had to, I will. Yeah. But the last few trips I haven't had to. So there's probably about 2 or 3 trips I've done now without it. And, if it's email, you can usually just do it on your phone.
Yeah.
But if there's work involved, then it makes it harder. But usually I try and get everything done before I go.
Okay. Well, you're doing a better job at finding the balance than I am.
Well, I probably have less on my plate than you do, too.
Yeah, maybe, but I could probably be a little bit better. I even know we're going to probably go camping in July, and I'll still be responding to emails. I won't have my computer with me, but I will have my phone.
Yeah, and that's fine. You just pick, you pick a period of time and you say, okay, well, I'm going to just answer back. Like when I used to go to Europe and I did have work to do, and it was much, I had to be more in touch with the office at that point. I would just, I guess I would do it. If I were there, I would do work stuff at 6 because then it's 8:00 in the morning, let's say in the US. So, you just do it in the you just do it in the evening when people are just getting to work.
Yeah.
China, you deal with, our afternoon is their morning. So you learn.
You learn to balance the calendar wherever you are. Just keep everything still on the Pacific time so that it's not too confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think my laptop stays on the local time all the time. So
okay.
So that helps significantly because I'm like, okay, it's 10:50 in the morning there. It doesn't really matter what time it is. You're trying to set up calls. Sometimes those pop up.
Yeah, you don't. You don't have to like all the math to figure out what time it is at home. Some places you go, it's really easy. It's like 12 hours. Great, 6 in the morning, at night. Other places you have to actually do some math in your head, and okay, it's 8:00 in the morning at home, and it's where I'm in Asia, so it's 8 in the it's 8 in the morning here. It's 4:00 in the afternoon there. I can call them.
Yeah, and on my last trip to South Africa, I got my times mixed up for a board call for my soccer club that I'm part of, and I was like, guys, I said I would make it, but it was actually 3:00 in the morning for that call, so I definitely will not be on a phone call. I'm like, I can get up, but like I'm absolutely useless. I will not be able to think about soccer stuff at that time in the morning.
I know.
Yeah. Total divergent though, and off of my normal questions, but you said you've done quite a lot of trips. What was the last trip you did?
Just got back from Egypt and Jordan.
Oh wow, how was that?
It was good. It was super interesting. There's, Egypt's impressive as far as the ruins and the tombs and the temples and they're still digging stuff up. And they're still finding stuff, and it's just incredible. And some of it's really, really well preserved. Some of it had been, different, like the Greeks went in and the Romans went in and the Coptics went in and kind of ruined some of the ancient Egypt hieroglyphics and stuff like that.
Great.
It's really interesting. It's just, it's just different. I usually do Europe. I love Europe, but I went to Thailand late last year with Cambodia and Vietnam, and then just got back from Egypt and Jordan. And so these two trips have been incredibly different and fun, just in a different way. A lot of work though, because there's so much to take in, and they have you going the whole time. And
probably not the most direct flight paths either.
It takes forever to get there, but
Yeah. Well, I feel you when I go to South Africa. It's 35 hours door to door. So
to South Africa, 35 hours
door to door. So traveling to the airport, layovers, all of that.
Okay.
So,
it's a lot.
It can be a tough one.
That's next year's trip.
Oh, well, reach out. I'm always happy to give you some advice.
I will definitely, but I'm kind of like, do we have to go? I'm so tired.
Georgia, for those people who are thinking of starting their own consulting business in the accounting world, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the most important thing is to make sure before you even start that it's something you want to do. I mean, maybe you can test it and see if it's something you want to do. And then the other thing is to know that there is the marketing piece is, I think, what people forget, or the business development and the networking and becoming known out there. And I think that's pretty important. People have to know who you are and they have to know you're there. So being out there, I think, is really important.
Yeah. I mean,
some of us are introverts and it's hard.
Yeah. I'm an introvert, but you have to learn to adapt, right? If this is what you want to do, you got to realize this is part of the job.
Yeah. And then you have to decide what groups or what networks or who are the people that are your power partners or that you want to work with, and then just you start you focus on that, and it takes a minute to find to kind of get it all right, but once you have it working, then you just build on it. But I think that's probably the one piece as far as financial people go. I mean, we're just not that good at getting out. Some are great, the majority aren't. So that's been, and then just to keep it up, especially I'm a solopreneur. So especially as a solopreneur, it's really hard sometimes when you're busy.
Yeah. It doesn't matter to the relationships if you're not constantly working on them. People will sort of forget about you a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
It happens pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, I looked somebody up, but this was a few months ago, and I was going to reach out to this person, but they retired. Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. At least they put it on their LinkedIn profile. So I didn't bother calling and saying, hey, how's it going? And, they've been retired now for about a year or two. But that's good to know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Keeping in touch. And, that's why I sort of spoke about your power partners and having that group of people that you're consistently touching base with, reaching out to, sharing articles with, it can make a big difference.
Oh, yeah. And then it keeps you top of mind, too. And I think the posting on LinkedIn helps a little bit. I mean, it just lets people know. I'm not expecting, tons of business to come in through that. It's more, for me, it's more about, let me just share knowledge and hopefully somebody will find it helpful. But also it's a way to let people know you're still there and active.
Yeah. And for sure. And in this world, right, doesn't matter how trusted the person is that's recommending you, they're going to go search who you are and figure it out. So if you have got a place where you're talking, putting content out, adding value, that goes a long way because people are like, oh, well, they're willing to help people over here, so I'm sure they'll be able to help me.
Yeah, and it's somebody who's willing to take the time to become part of a networking group or post on LinkedIn or share their knowledge.
Yeah. Georgia, what's the best advice you've ever received that's helped you be successful in your career?
Oh, well, probably, my dad, he actually taught us young, the three of us kids, how to save and invest money and to live below our means. So it's helped a lot. It's not, I don't know if it's actually career advice. I think it's more life advice, but it's really helped because, you always need that bucket of money in case you need it. You learn about, okay, I'm investing for the long term, and you go through all your lessons and stuff, but you have, emergency fund, you maintain emergency fund. If business isn't as good as you expected, do I have enough money to get through the next X month until I can bring some more business in? So that's been a really helpful piece of advice and practice, because you're actually able to take more risks, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, in the place where you are as a solopreneur as well, it gives you the flexibility to be a little bit more picky and choosy and take those vacations.
Yeah, and be able at this point in my career to do that. If I need to take some time off, I'll just work with my clients. And so far it seems to work okay, but but having that a little bit of savings helps not, you don't feel as stressed out.
Yep. I think a basic financial literacy makes a big difference for a lot of people, understanding, it seems silly, but a lot of people don't understand money in versus money out.
Yeah.
And the differential, and understanding that there's going to be rainy days,
Yeah.
Go buy a new pair of tires for your cars nowadays. They cost a lot of money. Like you need to put money aside for that.
Everything is just expensive now. And then even, I get shell shocked, and I'm pretty good at, keeping up with stuff, but boy, I've been shell shocked a lot lately.
Georgia, I've really appreciated our time today and this conversation. I like to always end off with asking people to just share something a little bit on their personal side, so it gives us a little bit more insight to who you are as a person outside of your business.
So who I am as a person. So I have a couple of Greyhound rescue dogs. So it's a breed I love, and they're just fun and easy dogs to have. And so I've been active in adopting them and rescuing them for, probably almost 20 years now.
Wow.
And so that's fun. And there's not really much racing, so, you can't get them much anymore. But the other thing I'd like to do is I have a Porsche, and I drive with the Porsche Club and do a lot of backroads driving. And we have, the group's really, it's just a lot of fun, and, nothing more fun than just a bunch of Porsches heading out on the open road.
So fast dogs and fast cars, right?
Fast cars, fast dogs.
Very nice. Georgia, I really appreciate this. On Product Conversations, we like to end with some rapid fire. So I have 5 questions for you if you're ready.
Okay.
This should be interesting. What is your dream vacation?
Oh, my dream vacation. Oh, God. I would say Europe for sure. Going to Scandinavia. I would say like a European vacation to me is a dream vacation.
Great. Number 2, do you prefer audiobook or paper books?
Both. I have, I listen to books like in the car and stuff like that, but I use a Kindle here.
Yep.
When I'm reading.
If you have 20 minutes to exercise, what would it be?
I'm on a weightlifting program with a coach, and I could usually do the routine's about 40 minutes, but if I only had 20, I could still do some of it.
What is your favorite piece of technology that makes your life easier?
Oh, my phone.
Yep. So it's a popular answer. It's amazing how many people are very dependent on that device nowadays.
You don't have to carry a camera anymore when you go somewhere. I don't carry a computer anymore when I go somewhere. I just take my phone, and you also just have to be careful not to lose it. But I think most people at this point are pretty good.
Yep. Final question. What was your favorite meal growing up?
Oh, probably something Greek. I would say probably moussaka or something like that.
That's always a winner.
Yeah. Oh, nothing beats a good moussaka or pastizzo.
I need to go find some good Greek food, I think.
There's Nick the Greeks here. There's one in Nevada.
Yep.
Their pitas are great. They taste very Greek.
Okay. Well, I will trust you that it's authentic-ish enough to count. Awesome. Georgia, I really appreciate the time today. Thank you for being on Product Conversations.
Oh, thanks, Zane. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad we got to connect finally on this.
And with that, we ended another Product Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insight from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Pro Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence, embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Pro Conversations.